So rumors are already circulating about a likely Resident Evil 4 remake on top of a Resident Evil 8. With Resident Evil 8, I'll put it bluntly, I just don't have any interest in doing a standalone video for it. I will say though that I don't mind the aspects of 3.5 and even cut concepts from Revelations making some return in some capacity into Resident Evil 8. That sounds very interesting to me, and to some extent the 3.5 concepts did bleed into Resident Evil 6, so that's not necessarily new. But that being said, I don't intend on supporting Resident Evil 8 if it plays a lot like Resident Evil 7. I would much rather prefer a game that plays very similarly to Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes. However, this is only the case if the rumors are true about Resident Evil 8. That said, I'm not really here to talk about this game, I'm here to talk about Resident Evil 4, so let's get into the main topic of today's video. This really shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone that was looking for the next Resident Evil remake. And lo and behold, Resident Evil 4 was going to be that next game. It just should not be surprising that Resident Evil 4 was in line to be remade. Now, I'm not saying that that is justifiable as to them skipping over Code Veronica. I am just simply saying that it is not surprising that Capcom wanted to remake Resident Evil 4. I will get into Code Veronica in this video later down the line, but first I want to talk about RE4. Now, there are a number of reasons as to why I'm saying that they would want to remake Resident Evil 4. For starters, Resident Evil 4 originally released in 2005, and the older the game gets, the more it becomes justified to remake a game that is arguably outdated. Yes, I know that might sound strange to some of you, but think of it this way. For starters, in terms of movement, Resident Evil 4 is outdated mechanically speaking compared to later entries in the franchise. For its time, the game was very revolutionary, but that's no longer the case, especially when you start comparing it to other games in the franchise such as Resident Evil 5, 6, Revelations, Revelations 2, Remake 2, and Remake 3. Also in this regard, because Capcom was very lazy in terms of remastering the game's textures to where fans have to mod it on PC to make it look somewhat HD, to some capacity, I would say it could also use a visual update, so it only makes sense in those regards. Another reason why this remake shouldn't come as a surprise is that Capcom will not just keep porting the HD remaster every generation. Think about it. Why would Capcom waste resources on porting over the same game that you can already get on several different platforms across several different generations of hardware? Especially now when most people already own the original Resident Evil 4 or have no interest in purchasing it again on current gen hardware. It also doesn't help that for the next generation of consoles that will feature backwards compatibility, those of you that already own the Xbox One and PS4 version would literally have no reason to buy a Series X or PS5 port of the game. For Capcom, it would make the most sense to just remake the game from the ground up. But the main reason why they decided to remake 4 over Code Veronica is simply because 4 is one of the most popular games within the franchise, whereas Code Veronica isn't. I know this might be a harsh reality for some of you to accept, but it's the truth. Just look at how Code Veronica has been treated over the years, especially when it was on PS2, where they just bundled it with RE4 and Outbreak File 1 via Resident Evil Essentials Collection. In Japan, when the HD remasters for 4 and Code Veronica for PS3 and 360 were released, they were bundled together in a package known as Biohazard Revival Selection. This is one of 2 bundles that I'm personally aware of, the other being for the Chronicles series. Slightly off topic, I know, but the point still stands that they couldn't have given that game a separate release in Japan. The only reason why I'm personally aware of this is because I imported a copy of one of 2 Biohazard Anniversary packages at the time. And then, of course, this generation when Capcom had the opportunity to not only port the HD remaster of Code Veronica onto PS4, Xbox One, PC with a potential Switch port years later, they didn't do that. Instead, what we saw was Resident Evil 6, Resident Evil 5, and Resident Evil 4 ported to current gen and PC with physical copies of Resident Evil 4, and then later down the line a Switch port for basically all 3 of those games. To make this even worse, Capcom only released Code Veronica via PS2 to PS4, a feature that pretty much everyone has criticized and has been heavily disappointed in. Now, I know that I went on a bit of a tangent here, but what I'm trying to get at here is that while I do heavily agree that Code Veronica was not treated fairly given its history, it really shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. Capcom, unfortunately, isn't and probably will never truly go back to the golden age where they'd do some really awesome stuff for great games, even if they might have been niche. They're going to do what most companies would want to do, and that is focus on where the money is. It's a sad truth that has to be reiterated, and that is Code Veronica just will not make them as much money as 4 would due to sheer popularity. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Didn't Capcom say that they were more interested in seeing a game that was received well by both fans and critics rather than a game that sold well? And my answer to that is yes, they did say that. However, this is the same company that said they wanted to bring back dormant franchises and IPs, and I have still yet to see that happen. Like, seriously, I understand why Code Veronica fans are upset, but how do you think other fans of Capcom feel not seeing some of their favorite games and franchises getting continuous support like Resident Evil does? Personally, what I've learned about Capcom over the years is that they might say a thing or two, but a lot of the time they really don't follow up on those statements. Seriously, I'm still waiting on Onimusha remasters, and I'd love to see Capcom revive things like Chaos Legion, God Hand, or even do a new Haunting Ground. Really just anything from the typical Monster Hunter fighting game or Resident Evil. But until Capcom actually follows up on those statements, you might as well just take those with a huge heap of salt. There is, however, something that you can possibly do to influence their decision, but only if it's done civilly and respectfully. Look, I understand wanting to be heavily critical of the developers. Hell, I do it all the time with Masachika Kawada and Koshi Nakanishi. I genuinely hate those two for what they've done with Resident Evil. But do it in a respectful manner, because after all, these people are real. They're real people. They have real lives. And I doubt the first thing that they want to see is a bunch of people issuing disrespectful and potentially life-threatening comments to start off their day, especially when COVID-19 is going around. So what you really need to do if you want to see Code Veronica get a remake is to tag the developer handle at dev1_official over on Twitter and tell them respectfully that you would like to see a Code Veronica remake happen. While you're at it, let them know that you hope the team is doing well and that they're doing everything they can to stay safe from COVID-19. Believe me, small little gestures of kindness can go a really long way for people who are having stresses of work as well as a pandemic being stacked up all at once. Trust me, it would really make them happy if you just sent them nice comments like that. Another thing you could do is pick up a digital copy of Code Veronica where it's available. I'm sure Capcom would notice an increase in sales suddenly that would also potentially give them some small influence to their decision on remaking that particular game. I understand that some of you may not want to rebuy a game that you might already own, but if you really want this remake to happen, that might be the route that you have to go. Though admittedly, I do think that we need to see the same levels of energy that were given out for Resident Evil 2 Remake with that same type of passion that people had for RE2 Remake. Give that kind of same pressure, I would say. If you put that kind of pressure on Capcom, that might also influence them to remake Code Veronica. Lastly, you could fill out the new survey that Capcom put out today. While the survey is mostly in regards to the quality of RE3 Remake and Resistance, there are a few small segments that pertain to more broader questions about the franchise, and also the final question asks you to make any final comments that you would like to say towards the developers, which that could also be taken as an opportunity to tell them, hey, I want Resident Evil Code Veronica Remake. But that's all I really wanted to talk about for today. Please don't be surprised if you end up seeing a Resident Evil 4 remake or even beyond that. I personally will not be surprised if I see Resident Evil 5 and even Revelations 1 remakes. I'm just saying, but I feel like those are probably going to be likely at this point. Also, I'd like to know what your thoughts on the subject are. Please let me know down in the comment section below. And for those of you watching out there, please try to do everything you can to keep safe during this pandemic. And in the meantime, I hope you all enjoy today's video. And with that, I will see you all in the next one. Matane.